You are listening to last month's Patreon Party People podcast, which goes up for free on a 1-month delay. If you would like to listen to the most recent podcast the moment it goes live, simply visit patreon.com/blazehedgehog and pledge $1 a month or more. You can now also make a one-time donation, and anyone who makes a one-time donation will instantly unlock the current month's podcast for everyone. All you have to do is visit patreon.com/blazehedgehog, and don't forget, Blaze Hedgehog is written like one word. Once again, that's patreon.com/blazehedgehog. Greetings, patrons, and welcome to the last Colorado edition of the Patreon Party People podcast. I'm, of course, your host, Ryan Bloom, the owner and purveyor of this Patreon. Hey everybody, how you doing? Me, I'm not doing super great. Obviously, this podcast is really late. It is like the 16th of June. I thought about doing this podcast even as far back as the end of May, because I knew it would be difficult to do everything I had to do with regards to packing, with regards to getting a bunch of other stuff set up so I'd be ready to go. And that didn't really happen. And if I sound a little bit emotional, well, that's because I am, basically. I am probably not really in the best state to be recording a podcast right now. I haven't really had very much sleep in the last few days. And to be quite honest with you, I haven't really done anything. I haven't started packing. It is currently Friday. My brother will be here on Monday to pick all of our stuff up so he can take it out to Nevada. And I haven't started at all. It really feels like everything that could have gone wrong kind of has gone wrong. So I think I've mentioned this before. The original plan was that my brother would be out here on the 19th, he'd pick all our stuff up, the rest of our stuff, everything we're using to live, televisions, my computer, what have you. And then we'd all drive out together, like a big road trip out to Nevada, where we'd stay at his place for 2, 3, 4 weeks, maybe even like a month and a half, while we find our own place. That turned into, because my mom is 71 years old, my brother doesn't think that she would do very well on the road trip. So he's buying us train tickets. He'll come out, pick our stuff up in his truck, drive back out to Nevada himself, and then we'll take the train from Colorado to Nevada. That's not so bad. We've taken train trips like that before. Due to the way circumstances have worked out, now what's going to happen, my brother will be here on Monday, pick our stuff up. He'll leave by, we'll say, next Friday. We'll have to stay here in this house with nothing at all. No TV, no internet, no nothing for a week. It's basically one step up from being homeless. Now, I'm going to keep my laptop here, of course. I can bum off internet from neighbors, but it's not going to be very fun, I don't think. Now, of course, we have so much junk that, not all of it is going to Nevada this time. We would have liked to put some of it out, for donations, for people to pick up if they wanted it. We're just going to leave this stuff here. Stuff like my crummy old mattress, some basic tables and stuff like that. Stuff that is too big to fit in the trailer to take out into Nevada that we'll have to replace once we get there. That's something we were always probably going to do. So that's not anything new. That's not, that's not something upsetting, let's say. But then, after we spend a week here in this mostly empty house, then we're going to stay with my cousin Brenna, for a few days. We'll, have showers and things like that there. Well, we'll have showers here too. We'll have electricity, we'll have running water, we'll have a refrigerator, we'll have probably a washing machine, things like that. Those are the things we're leaving behind. And in the case of the refrigerator, that's actually, the landlords own that, so of course we're going to have that. But, we'll go stay with her for a few days, and then she'll take us to the train station, and it'll probably be about a week and a half between when my brother leaves and when we finally end up in Nevada. And that's not going to be easy, that's not going to be fun. Especially because we have a cat. Maybe I've mentioned her before. If you've watched my streams, you know that she interrupts quite a bit. In 2012, when my dog died, about 2 months later, we had a neighbor living next door, and she didn't really take very good care of her cats. She was always going on these trips for, weeks at a time, and she'd always have us go over to her place and feed her cats while she was gone. And as it turned out, feeding her cats while she was gone basically meant that, every other week, for 2 or 3 weeks straight, we'd have to go over there, feed her cats, and then leave. And, we get attached to cats, things like that. They'd come out. They were very shy cats, is the thing. Apparently there was sort of a hierarchy where this one, really big, I don't want to say he was strong, he was definitely a fat cat, called Spooky. Apparently he would rule the roost and beat up on all the other cats. You could tell, he was the one who ate all the food, and nobody else really got a chance. Everyone else would hide, except for Spooky, who would greet us with open arms when we came over there. And one of her cats, she had 2 cats. She had May May and Mai Mai. And then a fourth, I don't know that cat's name, it was an orange tabby, but May May and Mai Mai were Maine Coons. I guess the long and short of it is, the neighbor next door eventually moved, and she had to get rid of all of her cats. Because she moved to, California or something. So she put all of her cats in a shelter except for May May. And she said, okay, well, I'm moving to California. I want to keep May May, my cat, because I love May May. But, I can't take her with me right now. Can you guys look after her? And this was, a month, 2 months after the dog died. Maybe in a week. I don't even remember. That was a hard time in my life. But basically, when you're so brokenhearted after you lose a pet like that, and she was kind of exactly what we needed right then, or at least what I needed. And, she said, I'll be back in 2 or 3 months to pick up the cat. Thanks for looking after her. And 3 or 4, 5, 6 months pass. And I said to my mom, if she's not coming back for this cat in 6 months, she's ours. And almost 6 months to the day, she came back around and, wanted her cat back. And we went round and round in circles. We decided, okay, it would be too hard. Because the only reason she came back out to get the cat is because my mom was kind of hounding her about it and saying, are you coming back to get your cat? Are you coming back to get May May? And then she said, okay, fine, I'll come and get the cat. And, at this point, I didn't want her to take May May away because I'd become very attached to her. And she comes back and she gets May May, and she's about 5 miles away. She turns around and she comes back and she brings May May back because it would just be too difficult. The only reason she was taking May May is because she was feeling pressured to take her. And we said, we'll just keep May May. And, she's been our cat ever since. And since then, May May has become very attached to me. She's basically become my cat. And, she was very shy. She gets spooked easily. And over the course of the last, 5 years, she's very slowly, come out of her shell. She wouldn't let me hold her. She's not a lap cat. She, hates being on laps. She kind of hates being touched by people, to give you an example of, I guess, basically how traumatized and how abused she was. And over the course of the last 5 years, she's eventually, I've brought down the walls and she's become a much more loving cat. And I basically have to spend a week and a half without her. And that's breaking my heart because I know she's going to just lose her mind. She's going to think she was abandoned again. And I don't know if I can put her through that. And I kind of don't have any choice. And then on top of that, on top of everything else, I figured, I'll treat this like a vacation. I'll treat it like a trip. And what that means is that I download a bunch of videos to my Android tablet. So, I have something to watch when I don't necessarily have the internet. And I'm not going to have the internet for, quite a while here. So, I bought this 128 gigabyte SD card, which is an upgrade from the 32 gigs I had in my current Android tablet. So, I figured, I'll load it all up with all these YouTube videos and Giant Bomb premium content. I was going to buy a premium subscription to Giant Bomb, and I was going to put all this stuff on this SD card so that I have hours and hours and hours and hours of stuff to watch while I didn't have the internet. And, I got it all downloaded last night, and I go to put it on the SD card, and the SD card is no good. Windows 10 is telling me, it has all these bad sectors, there's all these bad blocks. I tried formatting the card, I tried repairing the card. It's not working. And that card cost me like $45. And now I've ordered a replacement that I'm hoping will get here before I have to pack up my computer. And I even spent extra on top of that to get expedited shipping to make sure it gets here before my brother has to leave and before my computer has to be packed up. But yeah, that is the long and short of my life at this exact moment in time, and I apologize for the way I sound, I guess. I keep trying to tell myself that, it's just, people move all the time, it's not a big deal. And 24, almost 25 years I've lived here. My entire adult life. There are things here, I've probably said this before. There are things in this house, there are things I'm looking at right now that I owned when I was 7 and 8 years old. I'll be 34 in just like 2 weeks. Well, let's see, it's the 16th. Plus 7, that would be like I don't know. Like the 26th? No, that wouldn't be, that's 10 days. Gosh, I don't know. I'm not in any kind of mental state to do math right now. But on lighter notes, those Sega documents I was mentioning last month about like the toy design, I think I found them. I found something related to them. I was going to have them in front of me to read off on this podcast, but they're currently upstairs. I don't have a scanner anymore right now. When I upgraded to Windows 10, my old, it was like a Visioneer 4400 or whatever, doesn't work on Windows 10, so I'd need a new scanner, which is something, I'd thought about buying until this whole moving stuff happened. But basically, I found a photocopy of the Sega documents. Back when my mom had a scanner/fax machine, it could do like photocopies on thermal paper. If you remember, like the Game Boy camera had a printer with it that was, thermal. It basically uses a laser to etch in the pattern on the paper so that you don't need ink, so that, basically the printer can print forever without, needing ink cartridges or anything like that. So the downside to documents like that is that over time they fade. So this is like a 23, 24-year-old document here, so it is really faded. You almost can't read it in certain regards. But it is, a legal document who signed it? I looked at this like 3 weeks ago, and I don't remember the signature at the bottom. I tweeted about it. You can always just go dig up my Twitter if you want to go look at that. But, it was, I thought it was like a lot thicker than that. Maybe there are like more documents somewhere in here. The full spread, as it were. But, it was like 3 or 4 pages of, thank you for submitting your idea. We want you to, do this, blah, blah, blah. If you want to sign off on the idea, please sign here, etc., etc. So, I did find a photocopy of that information, which is pretty cool, I think. Like, it's nice to, I thought I'd lost that, and, actually, I didn't lose it. Or, I did kind of lose it, but it was just buried somewhere deep in a desk drawer somewhere that, I didn't know where that was. What else? One of the things I thought would be a good idea was Waypoint takes like article pitches now. That was something Austin Walker started up while he was at Giant Bomb, and now it's a program he's continuing through on Waypoint, where basically, he wants to make undiscovered writers get the spotlight. And, it's kind of been rattling around in my head to do like a pitch for that system to be, like a guest contributor or something. So, I started writing like 2 different articles, just, spitballing ideas. One of them was called, like Sonic the Hedgehog and the Fear of Speed, which would have been like this, really, I think, interesting article about how, how Sonic is supposed to be a fast character, but people push back and say no, the speed was just a gimmick, and, how speed itself plays out in gameplay form, and how, in a certain regard, Sega and Sonic Team almost seem to be afraid to make Sonic go fast. They always need to, supplement the speedy gameplay with other things to, slow him down, and why they might do that. I'm not necessarily certain that article's really going to turn out. It was one of those things that sounded really good in my head until I actually, started writing it out, and then it ended up being one of like the hardest things in the world to write. I don't know if that's just because I'm having trouble staying focused with the move and everything, but it felt like this real like bright spark in my head, and then the moment my fingers touched the keyboard, all of that vanished, and it's been a real struggle to figure out where I want that article to go. So I don't know if that's going to go anywhere. It's probably not, to be perfectly honest. I mean, it's probably just going to get lost in the fray of all of this, all of this that should be going on right now, but isn't. And then a few days later, the brand manager for Sony UK made a comment about how nobody wants backwards compatibility for old PlayStation software on the PlayStation 4 because, the games just look old. Like, that's a good excuse. And that spawned another article idea, a collection of ideas that I've actually had kicking around in my head for many years now about whether or not it's possible for graphics to actually still be bad anymore. Like, you think about the nature of graphics and how they're sort of defined by progress forward. Nice graphics are graphics that look advanced, let's say. And we're reaching a point where there is no such thing as that anymore, where, the improvements of technology are getting smaller and smaller and smaller. We're not at a point of photorealism, but we are at a point where, we're rendering hair physics and things like that, where the leaps, the generational leaps in technological and graphical complexity are getting smaller and smaller and harder to notice. And then you think about like the indie scene, right? You think about like, so-called retro pixel art games, and now we have games that are deliberately trying to look like, old PS1 and Sega Saturn games. And if you really stop and think about it, is there such a thing as bad graphics anymore? Because retro now is a style, pixel art is a style, simple polygons are a style. Those aren't bad graphics, those are an intentional visual aesthetic. And so, I was trying to figure out a way to get an article out of that. And that wasn't quite as slow going as the Sonic article, but it is, again, it's a little hard to focus. So, but I think that will probably amount to something someday, whether that's, in a few weeks, in a few months, in a few years, who knows. But I'll tell you one thing, about the time I'm just sitting here with a laptop and no internet, I'm going to have a lot of time to contemplate a lot of things. Especially if I can't get this SD card to where I can get all my videos squared away before my desktop leaves. Because all that video that I was going to put on my SD card, that lives on my desktop right now. I don't have enough space to put it on this laptop. This laptop only has like a 250 gigabyte hard drive in it. And that's almost the size of that SD card. And there's obviously, there's old games and stuff here on this laptop. So I only have like maybe 25 gigs free. So, there's no way I could put anything like that on this laptop to make it transferable when the SD card gets here. So, I'm probably going to have some time to write. I'm also going to have some time to work on Overbite. That's like silver lining to all of this. That's one of those things where I'm actually kind of excited, is that, I'll finally have a chance to sit down and focus on Overbite again. Because, right now I don't got to go back to work anymore. I don't have any responsibilities except for nearly sobbing into this microphone, writing on whatever documents I choose to write on, and working on Overbite. So, I'm not sure how hectic things are going to be up at my brother's. I do know that I will have a room to myself, a place where I can, chill out and not have to be in front of the family all of the time. Like, I don't have to sit and watch their TV. I don't have to do anything but basically sit on this laptop. And I guess, go house hunting or apartment hunting or whatever. But, I'll have time to myself, hopefully. Like, that's things I keep trying to tell myself about how this move isn't going to be so bad. But, what else? Speaking of not having internet for a while, and not having my desktop for a while, obviously, I need to get things in order as far as my YouTube channel goes, because I'm not going to be able to post on it for a while, probably not until at least August. So, I had big plans for things I wanted to schedule to post while I was gone, and one of the big ideas I had was, I'll do... Because, like, my Patreon rewards, they're kind of nebulous, right? I know they're kind of nebulous. Like, I say, if I reach this much money, I'll do a podcast. But outside of what I'm doing right now, I've never really done a podcast. I've never really done a podcast with another person. I've never had a co-host. Podcasts, I've been on other people's podcasts. I've been on the Nitro Beard podcast a couple times when they were still running that. And I feel like I didn't do a especially good job being a guest on those podcasts, which is, of course, why I've started doing this podcast. But yeah, when I say, I'll do the Sonic comic review podcast with a friend of mine, nobody really knows what that's going to turn out like. And when I say I want to do the ultimate Sonic Unleashed Let's Play, nobody really knows what that's going to look like either. So I figured, I'll throw that together. I'll throw together the first 3 to 5 episodes as kind of like a pilot series. I actually recorded the first hour and a half of Sonic Unleashed up to the first boss, thinking, that'll be the how far I'll play into the game for the preview program. For the pilot series, I'll play up to the first boss. And when it really came down to the logistics of producing that, because the way I'd want to do it is to play the game normally, play the game without doing commentary. Just record straight plain gameplay footage of Sonic Unleashed on the Xbox 360, and then go back and write a bunch of commentary. Basically, it's what they call in the Let's Play industry, post-commentary, I think. So, I'd have to write scripts, I'd have to figure out talking points, there would be some editing where I'd edit in, visuals or graphs or profiles, things like that. It wouldn't just be a normal Let's Play. I use the reference point of Research Indicates Jurassic Park Trespasser Let's Play, where, he does all this picture-in-a-picture stuff. He does, there's this big sort of post-mortem intro, all this kind of, really cool, like, editing stuff. And that's what I'd want to do for the Unleashed Let's Play. But, it came down to it, I thought, well, gosh, this is going to be a lot of work. And this was like 2 weeks ago that I thought this, because, that footage is sitting on my hard drive right now. And just all that work of figuring out what to say, writing out scripts, narrating it, editing it all together is too much to think about right now. So I tabled the pilot series for now. I'd like to get back to it as soon as humanly possible. I might try and copy that footage onto this laptop, because I think it's like a 20 gigabyte MP4 file. I might write scripts for that while I don't have the internet. I'm not entirely sure. I probably should just say screw it and get back to work on Overbite, to be honest. But, that was something that I had planned for the YouTube channel while I was gone that isn't going to happen. In its place, when I did a stream, gosh, what was it? It wasn't the Overbite art stream, which, by the way, last month I did an Overbite art stream where I tried to show my process of making sprites for that game, and it ended up being kind of a difficult stream to do because it was the first one of that kind I'd ever done before, so I didn't really know what I was doing, and it took forever for me to get started and all this other nonsense. Definitely a learning process for future streams like that, but it was during one of my streams in the last couple months that I said, maybe I'll do a Let's Narcissism for Overbite. So I ended up getting that recorded and uploaded, and that's one of the things currently scheduled to go up on the channel in my absence. It'll be about 3 episodes, which you'd think, Overbite's such a short game, it wouldn't be 3 episodes, but the first episode I end up going over, other Halloween prototype games. I think most of them are on my Patreon for you guys to download. There's the adventure game and there was the pumpkin game. I go through, why I was making those, the inspiration for making those, why I never went forward with those games. And then episode 2 is me playing Overbite properly, like doing a full playthrough, and then I attempt a speedrun, and, well, you'll see the result of that. And then episode 3 is just, it's a kind of like a no commentary sort of bonus thing. You'll see it when it goes up. So those are 3 videos that will go up in my absence. I also have a kind of montage of me and my friends playing Left 4 Dead 2, because we put 900, 1,000 hours each into Left 4 Dead 2 over the last, 5 years. And we kind of fell off of it a little bit in the last 2 or 3 years. And then every now and then, we come back around and we play a few rounds every 6 or 9 months. So now that I have this really nice recording setup on my desktop, where my new NVIDIA graphics card records stuff so easily, it's 2 buttons and I can be recording any PC game at full resolution, full frame rate. It's really good. So, Left 4 Dead 2 comes up, where, they invite me to play, and I think, okay, I'll record it. So I recorded 2 different matches. I edited them down to what I think is probably the best parts. Each one, it's 2 videos, 2 Left 4 Dead 2 videos, and each one's probably around, 13 to 15 minutes, and the matches themselves usually last to, we'll say up to an hour. So, I compressed these videos down quite a bit. So, that's not something I'd consider a super great upload to be doing, but it's kind of also all I had. So, that makes 5 videos right there, 5 edited, produced pieces of content, let's say. And then just for a little bit of padding, so I had, enough stuff to go up, I started doing, a long time ago on my YouTube channel, I used to just upload the MP3s I make, the Fruity Loops MP3s I make of MIDIs that I download from vgmusic.com. So I used to post videos that were basically just, hey, listen to this song, here's a download link, go check it out. And then I stopped doing those for 4 or 5 years, partially because my MCN full screen told me that, maybe I shouldn't be doing those, but, I see other YouTube channels doing them still, even though they're with an MCN. So, there's going to be 4 songs that go up in between all these other videos to kind of, pad the length out so that I have more videos scheduled while I'm gone. So I'm having around 9 videos going up while I might not have internet. So I'll have pre-scheduled videos that run from, I think, this Sunday all the way until the middle of August. So, I'm kind of set for a while on YouTube videos, even though they're not necessarily the greatest quality, I'd say. I think the Overbite Let's Narcissism Let's Play series, that's fine, that's like any other. Though I will say one thing about Overbite, one of my classic tangents here, where I kind of interrupt what I'm saying to say something else. Overbite is a surprisingly difficult game to talk about while you're playing it. I didn't really realize how focus heavy that game is for high level play, because you have all these I talk about this in the Let's Play, but you have all these almost fighting game inputs for controlling Dracula. And just it ends up kind of feeling like trying to rub your belly and pat your head at the same time. And It's actually kind of I say it differently in the video. Like, I shouldn't. I'm thinking about things, flubs I made. You'll hear it when you watch the video, hopefully. But yeah, 9 videos while I'm gone. An Overbite Let's Play, 2 Left 4 Dead videos, and 4 songs. 4 recent songs, too. I tried to pick... one of the good things about SoundCloud is they give you kind of like YouTube-like analytics. They tell you, what's your most popular songs, what region of the United States are they most popular in, things like that. So, I tried to pick popular songs that I've uploaded in the last year and a half, things that people really listen to. So look for that. That's if you're, because the patrons, the Patreons listening to this, you've probably heard these songs before, but I think I only have 40 followers on SoundCloud. Those of you who listen to them on my Tumblr, I only have 1,000 Tumblr followers. I say 1,000 in air quotes because 1,000 isn't anything to really sneeze at. But I have, in closing, on 15,000 YouTube subscribers who have never heard these songs before. So, maybe broaden my audience a little bit, things like that. It's good, quick, cheap, easy content. It's, sometimes a little bit of filler ain't gonna hurt nothing. Especially when you're strapped for time like I have been. So, that's the schedule from here until the middle of August. I think the last video goes up on August 14th. If after August 14th you don't see any videos from me, then I died. No, I'm kidding. That joke would have been a lot funnier if you could have seen my face, I guess. This is great radio. This is a fantastic episode of this podcast. I was on the verge of tears earlier, and now I'm doing jokes to no camera. Oh, I'm a loser. I'm not a loser. Or am I? You'll never know. What else is in my notes here? Oh, one of the other videos that I was planning on doing, going back to the somber tone, I shot a bunch of video of this house. 2 months ago, actually. Almost 3 months ago. Just, walking around these rooms, making sure that I don't forget what this place looks like, because I feel like I have kind of a bad memory. Especially a short-term memory. There's a story I tell a lot about meeting a guy in a parking lot 8 years ago. Comes running up to me, he's like, Ryan, it's me, Jason. Jason? Who's Jason? I don't recognize this guy's face at all. I don't remember his name. It's like, yeah, we were best friends in high school. And I'm just blank. I have no idea who this guy is. So, I don't know, from then on, I've started thinking, maybe I don't have the best memory in the world. But obviously, if I remember not having the best memory in the world, maybe that's not true. But, I think you patrons will know, I do tend to be sort of a space case sometimes. And I do tend to get distracted very easily. It's hard for me to focus sometimes. I've never been professionally diagnosed with attention deficit disorder, but I'm pretty sure I have it. I had teachers back in elementary school who were trying to get me diagnosed, which really made my mom angry. And speaking of bad memories, I feel like I've told this story on this podcast before. But, just for memory's sake, for being in this house as long as we have, I did a walkthrough, every room, filming everything. The house was a mess when I did it because it was right around the time where we were starting to pack. So, everything's all pulled out. There's all these boxes everywhere. And we tend to be kind of a messy family anyway. I'm not a very organized person, as if that wasn't blatantly obvious. So, there's a lot of just a lot of crap everywhere, a lot of clutter. You stay in a house for 24 years, you end up with clutter. And we have a lot of it. So, it's the clutter of just living in the house. It's the clutter of pulling everything out and starting to pack. So, the house looks kind of like a mess in this video. Or it will whenever this video comes out. Because that's something that I wanted to put up on the channel before I left Colorado. And I just never got around to it. I always wanted to do 1 or 2 more passes on the script I wrote, which is super depressing. The script is super depressing, not the fact that I didn't get around to editing it. I ended up walking around town a little bit, filming things there. Walked around the cemetery. So that's going to be a fun time. It's going to be a real uplifting video whenever I get around to it. That's another thing, maybe I'll try editing it on this laptop. I'm not actually sure. Like, this laptop, I treat it with kid gloves like it's a piece of garbage. It's not that terrible. It has a Core i5 in it, which is the same. I know they're not all Core i5s are created equally, but I have a Core i5 in my desktop, and there's a Core i5 in this laptop. This laptop has like 6 or 8 gigabytes of RAM. It's not a wussy laptop, but it feels so much slower than my desktop. So, I don't know. I have my Sony Vegas install files on this laptop. I could technically try editing video, but I am worried that it's going to overheat and explode, which, I don't want to do. But I guess that's the end of talking about me. So I guess we'll just move on to the news and what I've been playing. What have I been playing? Well, you'd think that with everything else I have to do that I wouldn't really have time to play video games. But as it turns out, I think I just dove headfirst into video games instead. One of the last streams I did was for Microsoft had this big sale on the Xbox where, they love their backwards compatibility, their Xbox 360 backwards compatibility with the Xbox One. So they had this big backwards compatibility sale where they put all these Xbox 360 games on sale for like $3 and $5 and $8 each. So it was around the start of June, probably right after last month's podcast. Not the start of June, the start of May, last month's podcast. I spent like $20 on myself and bought like 8 or 9 Xbox games. Xbox 360 games. It was like Earthworm Jim HD, because I want to do a video on that. Trials HD, Banjo-Kazooie, Ssx, Stuntman Ignition. Oh gosh, what were the rest of the games? Oh, I'm blanking. There was like 2 or 3 more. I know it was at least 8. Could always just look up my backloggery, but currently my microphone, I'm recording this in my bedroom, by the way. My microphone is actually sitting on top of this laptop. So typing is actually not something I can do very easily. Let's try it, shall we? I know, you're all super thrilled to know how I wasted my money. My backlog. Let's see, what did I buy? Oh, right. Okay, it was Viva Pinata, Trouble in Paradise, Trials HD, Banjo-Kazooie, SSX, Stuntman Ignition, Earthworm Jim HD, this Xbox Live Arcade game called Juju. I don't know if you've never heard of Juju. It's kind of like a Donkey Kong Country Returns clone. It's really cute. The graphics are really nice. It's on Steam. Again, it's called Juju. It's pretty, I kind of like it. And then I bought Cars 2. And you might be wondering, why'd you buy Cars 2? And I don't know, like those Cars video games aren't terrible. Like they're actually pretty solid racing games all told, I think. One of the things I was poking around with in Dolphin, the GameCube/Wii emulator, was emulating that very first Cars game, because that's not a bad game. It's a little on the easy side, but that first Cars game is an enjoyable racing game, let's say. Like the vehicle physics actually feel pretty nice. As long as you can stomach Owen Wilson and Larry the Cable Guy, it's not you could do worse for racing games on the GameCube, let's say. So, a friend had been talking me up on Cars 2 for like years now. I remember Giant Bomb did a quick look of Cars 2 many years ago, and they're like, yeah, this game's actually pretty alright. It's got like a trick system, there's drifting, there's like Mario Kart weapons. So, it's a good time. It's a little slow feeling, I'll say. Like, going back and forth between SSX and Cars 2, Cars 2 feels like a really slow game. Like, it feels slower than even the GameCube Cars game. I'm hoping that, at some point, I'll be able to upgrade my speed and it'll get a little bit faster, because in that regard, it feels a little bland, a little more bland than I would like, to be honest. But, it was like $3, so who cares? I feel like I've already gotten my $3 worth out of it. But the 2 big titans in that list is SSX and Banjo-Kazooie. In the case of SSX, it was the night I bought it. I was just starting up the game. That's another game. Same friend. I've been bugging me for years to buy it. And it was the night I bought it. I was starting it up, and I was telling him about, starting the tutorial. And he messaged me, and he said, hey, if you want to stream SSX, I could watch some SSX. So I finagled all my capture gear together and plugged everything in, and I ended up streaming the entire Xbox 360 SSX game in a single sitting. It took me like 6 hours, but it was a very enjoyable 6 hours, let's say. People will say that's probably not the best SSX game, and, maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong. I don't know. I guess the only SSX game I own is the third one. I mean, I say I only own the third one. The only one I've really played tons of is the third one, SSX 3 on the Xbox. And very recently, like within the last month, found a copy of SSX Tricky for the Xbox at the thrift store for like $1. So I bought that. Haven't really got around a chance to playing Tricky yet. I know Tricky is usually like the high watermark people think of when they think of the best SSX game. And if I have to say SSX one more time, I'm going to barf. But, that's the Xbox 360 one of those. That's a pretty good game. I don't know if it's better than the original Xbox games. I don't know if it's better than Tricky. It's probably not better than Tricky. But as far as extreme sports games go, I had a very good time. I liked that game quite a bit. So, the fact that I got it for $5 is like, wow, that's a good deal. So, if you ever see the Xbox 360 or PlayStation 3 version of SSX, maybe consider checking it out, because I like trick systems, I like going fast, and that is a game exclusively about trick systems and going fast. So, there you go. And it's hard, too. Like, that game tests you, especially about the time you finish the single-player campaign and get into all the time trial challenges, because that has, deep leaderboard integration, and there are people on my friends' leaderboard that are extremely good at that game. But yeah, that was a single night. The stream archive is on my YouTube channel, which, that was a video I put out a couple weeks ago, was, basically saying, hey, if you didn't know, there's like a giant stream archive playlist on my YouTube channel that isn't very easily visible. So, if you want to go digging for that, it's there. And in that playlist, you'll find the 6-hour stream archive of SSX. And then the game after that I really dove super deep into and didn't expect to was the Xbox Live Arcade version of Banjo-Kazooie. I didn't really intend on playing very much of that game because, I like Banjo-Kazooie, but I don't like it as much as I like, say, Super Mario 64. So, it was one of those things where it's like, Banjo-Kazooie on Xbox Live Arcade, it's like $2.99, like, I'll buy it. I'm not super in love with this game, but I like it enough to where it's worth $3 or $2.50 or whatever I ended up paying for it. So I bought that, and then over the next, 2 or 3 weeks, I not only played and finished Banjo-Kazooie, but I got 100% completion in Banjo-Kazooie, which, if you know me, that's not something I ever do in a video game, ever. I never got 100% clear in Super Mario 64. I never got 100% clear in, let's say 98% of the games I own. Like, if there's a minimum requirement to finishing the game, that's basically all I do. I think on my N64 cart for Super Mario 64, I've topped out at around... Ooh, excuse me, I got the hiccups all of a sudden. I topped out at around 108, 110 power stars. I think in Super Mario Sunshine, probably upper 90s. In Sonic Adventure 2, I think something like 104 emblems, things like that. So, I never get 100% completion in very many video games. But the thing is about Banjo-Kazooie on Xbox Live Arcade is they actually make some pretty smart mechanical changes to that game that set it apart from the N64 original. And one of those things is, in the N64 original, it has this really weird high score system. So you'll load into a level like Mumbo's Mountain or Freeze Easy Peak or Bubble Gloop Swamp, and it'll come up and it'll say, okay, here's your highest score for this level. And every time you load into that level, everything resets. So Banjo-Kazooie is a collectathon platformer where you're collecting jiggies, where you're collecting these music notes, these little golden music notes. They're kind of like your coins, and you're collecting these little furry creatures called Jinjos. And in the N64 game, every time you'd exit a level and re-enter, all that stuff would be reset. All the notes you collected would be reset, all the Jinjos, I think the Jinjos would reset, and maybe even the jiggies would reset. And you'd load back into the level a second time, and it'd say, okay, your high score for this level is 97 notes. So that means you exited the level before finding the last 3 notes. And now you have to go back through the entire level again and recollect all 97 notes until you can get back to your high score. And resetting your progress like that was ridiculous. And thankfully for the Xbox Live Arcade version of Banjo-Kazooie, they get rid of that. If you collect a note, it stays collected forever. If you collect a Jinjo, it stays collected forever. There's no more weird, bizarre high score system anymore. And that goes a long way to making Banjo-Kazooie feel a lot more fun to play. And as a result, I ended up just blowing through that entire game, 100% completion, every jiggy, every note, every Jinjo. And as it turns out, Banjo-Kazooie is a pretty fun game. Like I said earlier, it was a game that I liked but not loved. I think I love it a lot more than now. Like there are obviously like a lot of like real bad parts in that game. Some real dips and valleys, let's say. Freeze Easy Peak is a terrible level. Just awful. From every standpoint. It's way too big, it's ugly, it's full of like annoying enemies that are almost impossible to kill. It is just garbage, but the rest of that game isn't so bad. Bubble Gloop Swamp is a little, it's a little whatever. Trying to think what other levels there were. There's Treasure Trove Cove, Clanker's Cavern. Clanker's Cavern isn't a very good level either. It's just this one big giant room, and trying to figure out how to get around that room is actually probably one of the trickiest parts of that game. But, I wouldn't say Banjo-Kazooie is better than Super Mario 64, but I definitely have a much greater appreciation for that game now, even though parts of it are not the greatest. So, I did 100% completion in that game. That's pretty good. That's, I enjoy that. I think I did miss a couple of things in Banjo-Kazooie, because one of the big things about this version of the game is that they finally re-implemented all of the stop and swap stuff from the N64 game. Stop and swap was this secret unlock system that Rare wanted to make. They were already, after they finished Banjo-Kazooie, they were already planning to do Banjo-Tooie. So they built all these systems into Banjo-Kazooie where collectibles you'd get in Banjo-Kazooie would then somehow transfer to Banjo-Tooie. And how this ended up working out, or how they theorized it would work out, was that the N64 kept data in its memory for 5 to 10 seconds after the system was powered off. So the idea was that you'd collect like an ice key in Banjo-Kazooie, you'd power the system off, pull the cartridge out, put in Banjo-Tooie, and then Banjo-Tooie would look for the information where you'd collected the ice key, and it would give you the ice key in Banjo-Tooie. Now, Nintendo didn't really like that idea. It was a little bit fiddly on, how well it would work. So they couldn't actually implement that idea, but all those items still exist in the N64 version of Banjo-Kazooie. So the Xbox Live Arcade version finally makes good on all this stop and swap stuff, where now, instead of having to switch cartridges, it basically just writes a save file to your Xbox hard drive, and then other games can look at that save file and pull data out of it. So they have all these different stop and swap items in Banjo-Kazooie for Xbox Live Arcade, and I think I missed a couple of them. There's all these secret eggs, these mystery eggs, and I think I missed 2 of them. But I ended up getting the ice key, and I ended up getting most of the eggs. But the game still counts it as 100% completion. I still got, 100 jiggies, 900 notes, things like that. But yeah, Banjo-Kazooie, not a bad game, especially when you get it for $250. The other games, I played a little bit of Stuntman Ignition. I didn't really want to dig super deep into that game, so I only really like goofed around with it in quick play. That's an alright game. It's going to be a lot better once I dig into the campaign mode and play it properly instead of just doing quick play. I mentioned Cars 2. I mentioned, I guess I could talk a little bit more about Juju. I do definitely recommend this Juju game. Like I said, it's kind of this Donkey Kong Country Returns kind of inspired game. It's got like a lot of the same look, but instead of being Donkey Kong and Diddy, you're like this little, like almost like too cutesy panda bear and his little like snake buddy. It feels kind of knockoff-y, kind of knockoff-ish, I guess is a better term. Like I said, it looks a lot like Donkey Kong Country Returns, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. There does appear to be some kind of artistic integrity applied to this game a little bit, where, you know, it plays well, it controls well, it looks pretty good. It's on Steam if you want to like check it out. Again, it's called Juju. It's a 2D platformer, uses polygons and things like that. Plays a lot like Donkey Kong Country Returns. There's not really much more to say about it than that. Is that, you know, hey, you know, this game is Donkey Kong Country Returns. Like, all the way the platforms, like, one of the things Donkey Kong Country Returns does is that all of its moving platforms are explained by like mechanics in the environment. It doesn't do any like magic floating platforms. There's always like, it's always something that turns on a gear. It's always something that, you know, rises out of the floor on a pillar, things like that. And Juju is the same way. And, you know, of course, Juju is this, it's, you know, got the jungle theme. It's got, you pound the ground just like in Donkey Kong Country, but instead of pounding the ground with your fists, it's kind of like this bongo slap, which again is kind of like a Donkey Kong sort of thing. But, you know, it's enjoyable enough. It's a little bit on the easy side, I'd say, but, you know, I was still early in that game. I think there's like, it looks like there's about 4 worlds in Juju, and I think I played about halfway through the second one, but like maybe there's like 5 or 6 worlds. I'm not actually sure. But yeah, Juju, probably recommend that game. It's not like the greatest game in the world, but, you know, it's enjoyable enough. Talked about Cars 2. I think that's the end of me talking about all the Xbox games I bought. And I think that, you know, that does it for all the games I played last month, period. It was literally just mostly Banjo and Ssx. I guess to go back to Ssx real quick, one of the weird things about that game is its attitude. Ssx was from the period of time in EA, like from like the Burnout era, let's say, where EA kind of had like this attitude, like you think, EA big, like that kind of branding. That's what an Ssx game was. But the Xbox 360 game originally had a subtitle called Deadly Descents, and it was kind of like a dark and edgy reboot on the Ssx franchise. They ended, after like fans saw that they were doing this dark and edgy reboot, they kind of pulled back on it a little bit and tried to make it a little more colorful and fun and a little less edgy. But every now and then you can see things around the edges of that game where it still looks really like edgelord-y. Like there's the titular Deadly Descent event usually involves you doing something that would normally kill a person. And, you know, that's one of those places where like the edgy nature of that game sort of leaks back through, which is just really weird. I just felt like bringing that up because I actually listed it here in my notes as Ssx Deadly Descents, which is what its like original prototype name was. What else? E3 has happened. That's another reason why I was kind of holding off on this podcast a little bit, is because E3 is still, I was going to say E3 is a threat. No, E3 is not a threat. Like, this E3 was weird and kind of a little bit bland, let's say. Not really a lot of home runs being hit at this E3, but it wasn't terrible. Like, it was just a lot of business as usual, I think. Gosh, who even went first? It was Microsoft went first, right? And, you know, they unveiled they unveiled the Xbox One X, which, you know, you think Xbox One is a bad name for a game console. The Xbox One X is like a dumpster fire, and I'm trying not to say dumpster fire very much anymore because I feel like I've been saying that a lot, but man, Xbox One X. The Xbone X. Sheesh. And that thing's gonna be like $500 and just, ugh. Like, ugh. What are you doing, Microsoft? Like, I know what they're doing. They're pitching themselves on this whole idea of the most powerful console ever, which is going to matter for probably all of 18 months, because I'm sure there are already computers out there, PCs that play video games that are vastly more powerful than that game console will be. But, I assume there's probably an audience out there, rich people. It's kind of like Microsoft getting in on the whales market, I guess you'd say, from like mobile gaming, where you have these people who spend like, $1,000, $2,000, $10,000 in Candy Crush to beat their friends. Like, that's a real thing that happens, by the way. Like, people talk about whales in mobile gaming spaces, and they say, where do these people come from that spend hundreds of dollars in a mobile game? Well, apparently they come from like Wall Street bankers who will literally just like drop $10,000 just to be top of the leaderboard. People like that. And I guess that's kind of the market Microsoft's going for with the Xbox One X, I guess, is people, who have, 4K TVs and can spend just $500 on a whim. But the upshot to that is that I think the Xbox One S, the version they announced and released last year, I think that's dropping down to like $199, which is not bad, to like be perfectly honest. A few months ago, obviously I had a lot of success on YouTube. I ended up getting a larger than normal payment from YouTube for that. So I'm sitting on a little bit of money here, and the question has been for me, after I get through all this moving to Nevada stuff squared away, I'll probably have enough to buy either a PS4 or an Xbox One, and the question has been, which do I get? And for the longest time, I've been leaning towards the Xbox One simply because they're doing all this backwards compatibility stuff. And, over the 10 or 11 years I've had my Xbox 360, I've probably accrued a library of games that, goes into the $700, $800, $900 range, because I won that contest, the sweepstakes, back in, was it like 2012, where I got like, all these gift cards. I basically got like $1,000 in Microsoft points. And, I ended up buying a lot of games on that Xbox 360, a lot of digital games. And the idea of just throwing all those away because I don't have an Xbox 360 anymore is a real, that's a bummer to me. I keep all my old game consoles around. I still have a PS1, I still have a PS2. Even though I have a Wii, I still have my GameCube. I still have my Super Nintendo. I still have my NES. Somewhere around here, hopefully I'll find my Sega Game Gear. I tweeted out pictures of the Atari Lynx I found. That was mine. Which, to give you an update on that, I don't think it works anymore. I don't really have an AC adapter for it, but I did end up putting batteries into it and I couldn't get it to turn on. So I don't know the story on that, but I packed it away. It's in Nevada right now. But, being able to carry this library forward, I feel like I might have mentioned this last month, but that's something that's very important to me. So the fact that the Xbox One has backwards compatibility is something that, again, is very important to me. Because it means at least, select parts of this library will carry forward into the future at the very least. And that's something that I'm not going to be getting on the PS4. So, even though it looks like the PS4 might be having a brighter future than the Xbox One has backwards compatibility. And now that it has backwards compatibility with original Xbox games, so, that copy of Ssx Tricky I bought. I also, with Tricky, I bought a copy of Halo 2, Jet Set Radio Future. I own that game around here somewhere. All these games, all these Xbox games, really factor into the Xbox One ecosystem, let's say. So my options were either to buy an Xbox One and, get all the multi-platform games there, or buy a PS4 and then just buy a new 360, because new 360s were, I think, last I checked, like $200. So if the Xbox One S is getting back down to this $200 figure, it might be feasible for me at some point in the future. I'm not saying, in the near future, but at some point in the future, I could theoretically buy a PS4 and then pick up an Xbox One on the cheap. an Xbox One S. And that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world, let's say. So that's definitely something to consider now that the prices are coming down on all that stuff. And, that's something that people talked about when, the PS4 Pro was announced. It's like, prices on the old models will come down. And, yeah, that's true. But also there's going to be a point where only games will work on the Pro or the X, and that'll be a bad day. That'll be a bad day for me. But, I don't know. It's just something to consider. It still might be pertinent to just go out and buy an Xbox 360 before they all dry up and aren't available anymore because, as nice as backwards compatibility will be on the Xbox One, it'll never be every game. So, just getting a new 360 will probably be a better idea in the future. Anyway, I don't know. This stuff's all up in the air. We'll know by next month, let's say. But, that was Microsoft showing. They didn't really show very many, games. They showed Crackdown 3, which looked a lot like Crackdown 1 and 2. It didn't look very visually stunning. It didn't look especially great. They were originally, pushing that game to use the infinite power of the cloud, or the infinite power of the cloud, I should say. I always enunciate that word weird. But they were going to use the cloud for rendering all this large-scale city destruction, and that never really seemed to make a whole lot of sense to me from any perspective. And they weren't really showing much of that at E3 this year. They had Terry Crews came out and he screamed at you a lot, and they showed just a tiny little bit of 4-player co-op, and as far as the visuals looked, that looked a lot like an Xbox 360 game to me. Maybe edges were a little bit smoother, maybe textures were a little bit nicer, but it didn't really look that stunning, didn't really look that advanced. But whatever, it's Crackdown. I'm sure they're probably trying to push the technology of that game as far as they can without... if I had to guess, I'd say they're trying to take the cloud rendering stuff out, which probably means scaling back the visuals of that game quite a bit so that they can handle some of that city destruction gameplay, natively on the Xbox hardware. The only, I think that's literally it that they showed at Microsoft that was interesting was Crackdown, and I guess a little bit of BioWare's Destiny copycat, whatever that was called. I don't even remember the name. I remember the code name. The code name was Dylan. They were talking about that in a Kotaku article recently about Mass Effect Andromeda. Ooh, hard word to say. And then it was, what was it called? Oh, well, who cares? I don't care about online games anyway. I went on a tirade recently because of another E3 conference, Ubisoft's, where they showed off Beyond Good and Evil 2 at the end. And then come to find out, Beyond Good and Evil 2 only really began real production 2 weeks ago, a week ago. Michel Ansel gave an interview to The Verge where he was talking about, 2 weeks ago this game didn't even have graphics. Oh my gosh, what are you doing? And you hear him talk about that game, about Beyond Good and Evil 2, and it is pie in the sky impossibility, let's say. It's going to be this online, open world, multiplayer, massively multiplayer world simulation about alien planets. And it's also going to be a little bit of Grand Theft Auto, where you're this guy that comes up through the underworld or something. I don't know. It sounds so impossible. It sounds like what Michel Ansel wanted to do with Beyond Good and Evil 2 was create a bunch of algorithms to generate planets and then simulate life on those planets and then set a game in this simulated worlds. And it sounds like so many moving parts, so much complexity that where, if he pulls it off, it'll be absolutely insane. It'll be, a paradigm shift in gaming if he can do it. But I don't think he can do it. I don't think this game's ever coming out. It's already been almost 15 years since he said he wanted to do Beyond Good and Evil 2. And for him to say, 2 weeks ago the game didn't even have graphics. Oh boy. He's apparently been spending the last 3 years just building technology for that game, which, makes sense if you're going to be doing procedural generation on that scale. You do need some pretty mean tech to figure all that information out to generate, biomes and like he describes part of it as like a Sim City sort of simulation. So it sounds like not only will you discover new planets No Man's Sky style, you'll also be encountering civilizations that have been procedurally generated on those planets to I don't know, mine for natural resources, and, there will be societies that will be on these worlds that aren't predetermined or pre-scripted by the game engine, I guess, or, I don't know, it sounds big and complicated and probably impossible, so, and like the fact that it's online on top of everything else, the fact that he wants it to be this multiplayer, tell your own story, open world, it's just, ugh. Like, it's hard to even fathom what he wants that game to be, because it just sounds like such a collection of buzzwords and technology that has been attempted in the past and not really done very well, let's say. But, maybe he thinks he'll be the one to crack the nut, to crack the code, to crack the planet. Whew. Beyond Good and Evil 2, a game that will never come out. I'm calling it here. Beyond Good and Evil 2 will never come out. Maybe we'll get to next E3 and maybe like the whole Ubisoft conference E3 2018 will be about how amazing Beyond Good and Evil 2 is, about how all the worlds it's generating are so complex and beautiful and perfect. And like, this comes up at a weird time because I just had like a Tumblr ask about the nature, well, it ended up turning into the nature of procedural generation and neural networking, and how, one day someone will invent a neural network that will map out the United States 1-to-1 and put that into a video game. And, maybe that's kind of what Beyond Good and Evil 2 is attempting to do. I don't know. Maybe we're witnessing video games as we know it changing thanks to Michel Ancel. But I really don't think so. I think we're probably at least a hardware generation or two away from that. But, who knows? Who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm just repeating myself over and over and over again because I can't really fathom what Beyond Good and Evil 2 is trying to become. Sony's press conference was basically nothing. Like, man, I barely even remember what was shown there. I guess Uncharted 4 DLC was shown there. That really boring, bland, generic-looking zombie game called Days Gone was shown there. The God of War reboot/sequel was shown there. Dad of War, or God of Dad, whatever you want to call it. None of that looked interesting to me at all. Like, I don't know, maybe God of War will be interesting. But I've never played an Uncharted, so this whole, play as Chloe Price, that doesn't have anything interesting for me, because I don't know who Chloe Price is. If I played an Uncharted at this point, I'd want to start at, like, Uncharted 2. So, Uncharted 4 is a distant goal on the horizon at best. What else was shown at Sony? No Final Fantasy VII Remake, no Kingdom Hearts 3. Like, that's another weird thing about this E3, right? Is it feels like a bunch of these announcements came out before E3 hit. Like, there was a Kingdom Hearts 3 trailer like 3 days before E3 opened, and it feels like a lot of those surprises were either leaked ahead of time or deliberately posted ahead of time, to where, like, just this E3 didn't feel very exciting. It feels like all the stage shows were trying to get shorter and shorter and shorter. Like, you want to talk about short? Nintendo did a 20-minute presentation where they didn't even show all the games they have coming in the future. Like, they had like 2 or 3 games that they had at E3 that they didn't show in their Nintendo Direct presentation for E3. Like, it feels like so sad to see E3 become so, I guess, anemic like that. Like, just that you wouldn't save your biggest surprises for your press conference. Like, the press conference is supposed to be this big celebration of the company, and then you put you put out all these trailers before the press conferences, and it feels a little bit like opening your Christmas presents early, like, as weird as that might sound. Like, I know the game industry can be really weird with the way it treats things like E3, but E3 is supposed to be this big, or at least it was supposed to be, it used to be this big sort of like, hey, look, here's how we're going to be awesome for the next 2 years. And now it's become just almost a shadow of its former self. And it doesn't feel like it needs to be like that. It feels like, these could be a lot bigger, a lot more bombastic than they used to be, and they just aren't, because so many publishers are sort of divorcing themselves from being part of these press conferences. Like, a Kingdom Hearts 3 demonstration during Sony's press conference would have been a big cool deal, and instead they just put the trailer out unceremoniously, like 2 days before E3, and it's just, it's so boring, there's a word for this I'm trying to think of, like hamstrung, it's so truncated. I don't know, there's a word in there that I'm looking for that I can't find right now, but it kind of sucks, really. Like, imagine if Microsoft comes out on stage and they're like, yeah, check it out, we have Bubsy. Like, imagine that stupid, weird, goofy moment where they introduce Bubsy. Like, they'd never do it, of course, but that's the kind of E3 I want to go to, where weird, stupid, impossible stuff happens. And in that way, it almost feels like we were spoiled, because the last 2 E3s have been nothing but weird, impossible stuff like that. Like, the announcement of Shenmue 3, of Final Fantasy VII Remake, of The Last Guardian. It's just all these impossible things that we never thought would actually happen started happening, and then we get to an E3 like this where it's not terrible, it's just very average, and it just feels like we fell off a cliff somehow. What a bummer, in a way, like a weird non-specific bummer. But we did get new Sonic Forces footage of, I don't know, bosses, of more classic Sonic stuff, more them mining nostalgia again. Shadow the Hedgehog, Chaos Zero, and everyone's favorite Zavok the Zeddy from Sonic Lost World are back again to fucking do something. Wow, I swore on this podcast. I never swear on this podcast. Because I'm always worried, I think I've mentioned this before, I'm always worried that my mom's going to hear this. Like, privately among friends, I swear like a sailor, but when it comes to, like, stuff that's publicly facing, I try not to swear. But man, if there was anything that required swearing, it was just how boring and bland Sonic Forces looks. Like, you want to talk about doing something that's totally average. Like, it's Sonic Forces. Like, in a way we knew this was coming. In a way, I expected this. We knew that Sonic Forces was intended to be the 25th anniversary celebration game, which of course meant just like the 20th anniversary game, just like the 20th anniversary game would have been this big nostalgic celebration of everything Sonic's been leading up to this point. And true enough, that's exactly what Sonic Forces is. They're digging up all kinds of graves, looking for things that they can reference, like, oh look, it's Green Hill Zone again, oh look, it's the boss from Green Hill Zone again, oh look, it's the boss from Sonic Unleashed again, oh look, it's the boss from Sonic Adventure again, it's the boss from Sonic Lost World again, it's the boss from Sonic Adventure 2 again, look, Silver the Hedgehog is back, and he's talking about the Chemical Plant Zone. Like, oh my gosh, I get it, enough. Please do something. And, like, I'd say do something original, but it's a double-edged sword, because they did something original. They did Sonic Lost World, and that was garbage too. Like, oh my gosh, Sonic Team, what are you doing? I get it. The boost formula works, and the boost formula is what I asked for, but you are playing it so straight. You are playing it so average that it is a struggle to get excited for this game, because it doesn't look like anything's evolved. It doesn't look inspired in the least. It just looks so lame and generic. Like, who knows, maybe it gets better later on. Maybe it's just the levels they're showing. Because they've only really shown 2 levels. They've shown Park Avenue, which is the big post-apocalypse, city being destroyed level. And then they've shown Green Hill Zone, which is apparently being turned to sand. They better show something exciting about that game soon. Because, man, I just have this malaise about it. And they showed Sonic Mania. They didn't really show anything new about Sonic Mania, though. It was just because you get the feeling they're running out of levels to show for that game. There's a rumor going around that Sonic Mania is going to be about 10 levels. 6 old levels and 4 new levels. And you think about the levels they've shown for that game. They've shown, 5 levels, 6 levels for that game. So they've shown more than half of what's in Sonic Mania. So they've come out and said that, they want surprises for the game in the future, so they're keeping shut about the levels they haven't shown for now. So, Sonic Mania showing at E3 was basically just a lot of stuff we've already seen. We did see the boss of Green Hill Zone Act 2, which is the Death Egg robot from Sonic 2, from the end of that game. That seems like it's alright, I guess. Again, it's nostalgia fatigue, is basically it. I'm starting to actually get a little more excited for Sonic Mania than I used to be. I'm definitely coming around on that game a lot more. But it's still a matter of just having nostalgia fatigue to come from Sonic 4 to Sonic Generations to Sonic Forces to Sonic Mania. And, those are just the 4 most blatant nostalgia ploys. Sonic's been leaning on nostalgia for decades, basically. Since the Green Hill Zone level in Sonic Adventure 2, more or less. And it's just, Sega needs to get, better designers in there. They need to rebuild that world, rebuild that visual aesthetic, and find something that works. And, the boost formula works. So, obviously they have found something that worked, but they also need to find a way to evolve things naturally instead of just rehashing the same gameplay over and over and over again. E3 and Sega and Sonic Team. I guess the big thing out of Nintendo was Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle, which is this game that's been rumored in development for 3 years now. It always seemed really impossible. This really weird sort of Rabbids / Mario crossover that nobody ever really thought would happen, and now it's happening. It's revealed, and not only is it happening, but apparently that game comes out in a month and a half. So they spent 2 or 3 years, probably 4 years, developing this game in total secret, in total silence, only to just unveil it a month and a half before it's supposed to come out. And it's this weird sort of XCOM sort of strategy RPG, this turn-based strategy RPG. And it looks so weird and nothing anybody wanted. But then Ubisoft does their press conference, and Shigeru Miyamoto gets up on stage with Yves Guillemot, I think that's how you say his name, and they're talking about Kingdom Battle, and it cuts to the audience. And in the audience is the lead game designer of Kingdom Battle, and he is basically in tears. He is so proud of his game. He is so moved by Shigeru Miyamoto up on stage, praising Kingdom Battle, saying what, this historic collaboration between Ubisoft and Nintendo. And the lead designer, hearing this, is sobbing in the audience. Well, not sobbing, but you can tell, he's got that face where tears are in his eyes, and he is fighting against the emotion as hard as he can, and it's a losing battle. And you think, oh man, if this guy cares that much about this game, maybe it'll be alright. Maybe it'll be alright. But, who knows? Who knows? I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who have cared 1,000% for games they've made. They've put their heart and soul and blood and sweat and tears into their games, only to have them come out the other end like total garbage. There's a famous story I remember reading on the SRK forums many years ago from the lead designer of the Street Fighter the movie arcade game. and he talked about how he was the biggest Street Fighter fan in the world and how it crushed a part of his soul to screw the game up as badly as he did. Because in his mind, he was making all the right moves. And the product that came out the other end wasn't very good. And sometimes that happens. Sometimes, you love something so much, but you just don't have the talent or the skill to pull it off. And that's an unfortunate, circumstance that I think everyone has to face eventually. And, this guy might be crying real tears of real joy, of real pride, but that is also, as cold as this is to say, that is not a guarantee of quality. It's just a guarantee that he cares a lot and that he was very proud of his baby. But, that was E3. That was the things that were notable, let's say, at E3 for me. And I guess that's this podcast. I'm going to get all this set up, rendered out, uploaded to Patreon, and then I got to rush around and start packing like crazy. Honestly, once I get into gear, into packing, it's probably not going to be that big of a deal. Because like I said, we're leaving a lot of stuff behind. There's a dresser sitting here in my bedroom that we're leaving behind. Probably a lot of shelves. We're leaving our old 33-inch CRT TV behind because that thing's 200 pounds and it's so big and heavy. And when we get to Nevada, one of the things my brother has waiting for us there, he recently just bought a 60-inch TV for Christmas last year. So he has a TV just sitting in a closet somewhere that he's not using, a 42-inch LCD HD TV, and he's going to be giving that to us for when we move in wherever we're going. So, we will have stuff out there. He's giving us a car, basically. I think I mentioned this last podcast, but his wife just got a new car. So, they have an extra car, they have an extra TV, they have all this extra stuff that they're technically not using anymore, or at least he says they're not using anymore, that they're going to be giving to us when we get out there. So, we're junking our car, we're leaving our TV behind, we're leaving, my mattress behind, we're leaving behind our washing machine, because, it's going to be a tiny trailer. We can't really fit that much in there. So with that in mind, with the notion that there's going to be a lot of stuff here that I can't take with me and that I don't necessarily need to take with me, because even though we have all this clutter, it's a lot of stuff that we don't use anymore. I have a whole closet full of toys that I haven't touched in 20 years. So, once I get down to sorting through what I want to keep, what I want to take with me, it's probably not that much. I probably packed most of what I want to take with me the last trip, a month and a half ago when he was here. That was all my PlayStation games, all my Wii games, most of my Xbox 360 games, an old CRT TV, a little 19-inch color TV. Because, I have old game consoles that hook up to that. So really, all I'm really probably going to be taking with me this time is, a DVD player, a VCR, my computer, the last few games that are still kicking around here, like my racing wheel, I'm taking that with me. Just little stuff, not big stuff. Probably a select few toys like keepsakes, things like that. But everything else will be trashed, will be left here, will be thrown in a dumpster for all I know. And it's not much, no skin off my back, let's say. It's one of those things where, it's nice that I have it, and it'll be depressing that, I won't be able to take it with me, but it's also, you have to stop and consider, it's a bunch of stuff that I haven't touched in, years and years and years. So, once I get started packing, hopefully I'll have most of it sorted through by the time he gets here on Monday. So, that's another reason why I haven't been in a super huge rush to get everything sorted through, is because, I'm hoping it won't take me that long. And, famous last words, that's what I said last time. Last time I said, I'll put everything into just 4 or 5 boxes, and I ended up packing 15 boxes to send in the last trailer, so I don't know, that's my life. My life can be summed up in 3 words, and those are, I don't know. Oh. If I still have anyone still listening to this podcast at this point, thank you all for listening. This has been Patreon Party People. I don't know when I'll be back next. Maybe it'll be August, maybe it'll be September. With any luck, it'll be before Sonic Mania comes out, let's say that. because I have video reviews that I'm itching to get to, and hopefully everything will work out in the end. I don't know. Again, my life can be summed up as I don't know. So we'll get there when we get there, and at the very least, you'll hear from me eventually. I say this, I'll hopefully be able to bum off internet from neighbors while I'm still here. My brother has internet. The cousin I'll be staying with has internet. So, I'll have ways to keep in touch with people as the need arises. You can always follow me on Twitter. You can always follow me on Tumblr. You can check out the YouTube videos I have scheduled to come up all throughout the end of June, July, and the first 2 weeks of August. And with any luck, this will be a good move for me. We'll be moving into... It'll be a leaner, meaner Blaze Hedgehog, let's say. And if not, well, that's life, I guess, right? Take everything in stride, make the best of a bad situation, and other such sayings you might find on a church billboard. But that has been Patreon Party People Podcast. I have been Blaze Hedgehog, mostly known as Blaze Hedgehog, sometimes known as Ryan Bloom, and I'll see you guys when I see ya. So, see ya.